So I want you to just take a second and imagine an ancient civilization waking up from, like, an eons-long sleep.
Right, like millions of years.
Exactly. Millions of years. And, you'd expect them to be pretty disoriented, like fragile, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Kind of like a massive predator coming out of hibernation, just stumbling around, struggling to even remember how its own muscles work while it blinks against the harsh light of a totally new era.
That is the standard expectation, yeah.
Right. But what if they woke up, took one look at the sheer, just unbridled chaos of the galaxy around them, and immediately initiated this flawlessly calculated apocalyptic conquest?
It's terrifying.
No hesitation, no grogginess at all, just an immediate, mathematically perfect rollout of galactic terror.
Yeah, and it completely shatters that fundamental sleeping giant trope we're just so accustomed to in historical narratives.
Totally.
Because when we analyze ancient history, we're really conditioned to expect ruins. We expect dust, fading echoes.
Fragment.
Exactly. Fragments of a lost glory that, like, modern civilizations can just easily pick over and categorize. But what we are looking at in today's deep dive is the complete inversion of that expectation.
It's the opposite.
Right. This is an ancient past that is actively, and I mean aggressively, rising up to essentially strangle the present.
And if you are joining this deep dive right now, it is probably because you want to cut through the endless noise surrounding this specific threat.
There's so much noise.
So much. You're looking to understand the absolute core of the Sautekh Dynasty without just drowning in centuries of, like, fragmented imperial data, right?
But the source material we're unpacking today, it's chilling.
Yeah.
It doesn't describe a dying race clinging to its former glory. It outlines a hyper-aggressive, fully resurgent empire.
Resurgent is the perfect word for it.
Yeah.
And to really grasp the sheer magnitude of the threat they pose, we have to start at the exact moment of their awakening.
Right.
We have to look at the colossal miscalculation that basically unleashed the specific dynasty upon the stars.
Yeah, and the foundational context of that awakening, what the sources refer to as the Great Sleep, is defined by this really crucial piece of historical hierarchy.
This is the part that blows my mind.
It's wild. Before this massive 60 million year hibernation, the Sautekh dynasty was ranked as the third most powerful of the Necron dynasties.
Third.
And that numerical ranking, it's not just like a neat piece of trivia. It is the absolute psychological bedrock of everything they are doing right now.
It's just millennia of simmering resentment.
Exactly. It's a collective inferiority complex preserved across geological epochs.
Wow.
I mean, you really have to consider the sociological impact of going into cryostasis knowing you are only the bronze medalist.
Right, because the first and second dynasties, they held all the ultimate power, the highest prestige.
Yeah, and the Sautekh were incredibly powerful themselves, but they were always looking up at the ceiling. They were always runners-up.
Always second best. Well, third best.
Right. Then the Great Sleep happens. The galaxy completely changes.
Continents shift, stars burn out.
Yeah. Entirely new species evolve and conquer the galaxy. And when the Sautekh finally wake up, they discover something that alters their entire trajectory.
Which is that their core tomb worlds basically survive the eons perfectly intact.
Perfectly.
And the sources are, they're very careful with their phrasing here, right? They note this survival was through either quote-unquote chance or design.
Yes.
And I really want to dig into that design aspect because, I mean, the level of paranoia and absolute predatory patience required to build infrastructure that not only survives 60 million years,
Which is an unfathomable amount of time.
fathomable, survives that long but remains pristine, while your superior's empires just degrade into dust.
Yeah.
I mean, that implies a leadership that wasn't just, preparing for a long nap.
Yeah, not at all.
They were actively preparing for the aftermath.
They were building reinforced fallout shelters while their political rivals were essentially buying sleeping bags.
It is such a good way to put it.
If we really lean into that design theory, it suggests a faction that understood the immense vulnerability of the Great Sleep. They viewed it not as a sad necessity, but as a strategic choke point.
Like a filter.
Exactly. It is an exercise in extreme long-term forecasting, I mean, they calculated the degradation rates of planetary crusts.
The shifting of tectonic plates.
Right, the orbital decay of star systems.
Yeah.
And they engineered their tomb worlds to ride out that cosmic weathering perfectly.
So think about the Olympic team analogy you used, but like stripped of all the sportsmanship, right?
Okay.
You have a bronze medal team going into cryosleep. They wake up thousands of years later to find the gold and silver teams lost their training facilities.
Their equipment rusted to nothing.
Exactly. Their athletes are severely atrophied. But the bronze team, they open their lockers and their gear is perfectly preserved, just humming with energy.
Ready to go.
They aren't going to try to slowly reintegrate into the new sporting world, right? They're going to look around, realize the playing field has been massively tilted in their favor, and immediately declare themselves the undisputed champions.
The immediate cultural imperative shifts from mere survival to aggressive ascension.
Right.
The playing field wasn't just leveled, it was wiped completely clean, leaving their infrastructure towering over the ruins of their former superiors.
But, and this is a big but, the transition to claiming that undisputed crown was incredibly volatile.
Extremely.
Because the pristine survival of their physical infrastructure didn't actually translate to political stability.
No, it didn't.
When they woke up on their crown world, the central planetary hub known as Mandragora, they didn't awaken to this unified, triumphant dawn. They woke up to absolute chaos.
A localized civil war.
Right. So the physical tech survived, but the chain of command completely shattered.
In a power vacuum of that magnitude, immediately following a 60-million-year sleep, it indicates a society where individual ambition instantly overrode any sense of collective solidarity.
It was every robot for himself.
Basically, yeah. The immediate realization that they were now the preeminent power in the galaxy, it sparked this frantic, violent scramble to determine exactly who would wield that power.
Right.
And it is within the frantic, desperate violence of that civil war in Mandragora that we see the ultimate tactical error.
The big mistake.
A mistake that doomed countless worlds across the galaxy.
Yeah, and it is a mistake born of pure desperation and arrogance. We have this character in the sources described as a, quote, pretender to the throne on Mandragora.
Right.
So he is embroiled in this civil war. He desperately wants to secure absolute rule, but his forces are just deadlocked.
He's stuck.
Stuck. He cannot achieve the decisive victory he needs. So in his desperation, he decides to awaken a renowned military commander from stasis.
Nemazor
Imotekh. The entity we now recognize as Farron Imotekh, the Stormlord.
The Stormlord.
Yeah, so the pretender wakes him up, essentially handing him the command of his armies, expecting this legendary tactician to just, win the war and then politely step aside.
The hubris required to make that calculation is just staggering.
It really is.
Let's analyze the psychology of this pretender for a second. You are a struggling political entity, unable to secure victory against your own localized rivals.
Right.
Your brilliant solution is to awaken a being whose entire existence is defined by vastly superior strategic intellect.
It's so dumb.
You're assuming that your bloodline, or your tenuous political title, is enough to control a mind that processes warfare on a level you literally cannot even comprehend.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of an amateur chess player trying to use a hyper-advanced self-learning supercomputer to win a local tournament, fully expecting the computer to just, shut down once the trophy is handed over.
Or trying to leech a hurricane because you need a little wind for your sailboat.
Yeah.
The computer doesn't care about your local tournament. And the hurricane definitely doesn't care about your boat. So, Imotekh wakes up, assesses the chaotic civil war on Mandragora, and simply seizes control for himself.
Immediately.
He doesn't join the Pretender's faction at all. He removes the Pretender entirely.
Because to a mind defined by what the sources explicitly call cold calculation and ruthless efficiency,
Right.
the Pretender was nothing more than an inefficient middleman.
A bottleneck.
Exactly. Imotekh's usurpation represents the ultimate triumph of pure, unfeeling logic over the antiquated concept of royal entitlement.
Yeah.
The Pretender believed he had a fundamental right to rule. Imotekh looked at the deadlocked war, analyzed the variables, and deduced that the current leadership was the primary reason they weren't winning.
It's like he's saying, why am I receiving tactical parameters from a commander who is mathematically failing to win?
That is exactly it.
Yeah.
The most efficient, streamlined path to stabilizing the dynasty and securing the planet was to excise the incompetent leadership.
Just cut it out.
Right. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't some hot-blooded, theatrical betrayal.
No Shakespearean drama here.
None at all. It was a sterile, mathematical correction of a flawed system. He just removed the error.
Wow.
And once the error was removed, he could optimize the entire system to serve his ultimate goal, which the sources describe as the restoration of Necron glory under his sole iron rule.
See, I'm not buying this PR spin about restoring Necron glory.
Wait, why not?
I mean, when you look at how Imotekh operates, when you look at his demand that all other dynasties submit to his specific centralized iron rule, this isn't patriotism.
Ah, I see what you mean.
This is a megalomaniacal hostile takeover, totally dressed up in the language of national pride.
Right.
He doesn't want the Necrons to be glorious. He wants Imotekh to be glorious, and the Necrons are just the vehicle he's driving to get there.
That's a fair point, but I think the distinction between national glory and autocratic megalomania is entirely non-existent in Imotech's cognitive framework.
Like they're the same thing to him.
Exactly. To his flawlessly calculating mind, the Necron race can only achieve its destined glory if it operates with perfect, frictionless efficiency.
Okay.
And a system can only achieve perfect efficiency if it is controlled by the absolute most capable intelligence available.
Which happens to be him.
According to his own relentless internal logic, yes. His is the only mind capable of that task. Therefore, any other ruler, any dissenting dynasty, they are a statistical error actively harming the species.
So subjugating them isn't tyranny in his eyes.
No, it's forced optimization.
Forced optimization. That is terrifying. And unfortunately for literally every other living thing in the galaxy, Imotekh wasn't just optimizing a single planet.
Not at all.
By usurping the throne of Mandragora, he inherited the keys to that pristine, perfectly preserved infrastructure we discussed earlier.
The bronze medalist's perfect gem.
Exactly. He took command of an absolute juggernaut of a military and immediately began applying his ruthless efficiency on a galactic scale. I mean, the logistical reality of what he commands is just paralyzing.
We really have to move past the abstract concept of a threat and look at the concrete numbers the sources provide.
Let's do it.
So the Sautekh Dynasty controls 80 core tomb worlds.
80.
80. That alone makes them a formidable galactic superpower. But the truly staggering metric, the detail that fundamentally shifts our understanding of their operational reality, is that they control over 400 enslaved worlds.
Unbelievable.
400 worlds populated by other Xenos races.
I really want you, the listener, to stop and process the sheer scale of that. 400 planetary ecosystems.
It's massive.
Because when we usually talk about Necron awakenings, the narrative is almost always about localized extermination.
Right.
Right.
They wake up, kill everything, go back to sleep.
Exactly. They wake up, deploy their weapons, wipe the planet clean of biological life, and boom, done. But 400 enslaved worlds.
It changes everything.
It really does. That means they aren't just conquerors rolling through and burning everything to the ground. They are an imperialistic industrial superpower. They are actively managing biological populations.
And that transitions them from a purely destructive military force into an unfathomably vast administrative and logistical nightmare for the rest of the galaxy.
Because keeping people alive as slaves is harder than just wiping them out.
Exactly. Exterminating a planet is a single violent event. Enslaving 400 planets requires a continuous grinding apparatus of subjugation, resource extraction, and supply chain management.
It's a whole economy.
It is. They're utilizing the biological labor of hundreds of distinct alien species to feed their war machine. It implies a level of systemic exploitation that makes them exponentially more resilient.
Right.
You can't simply defeat their armies. You have to dismantle an entire interconnected economic foundation built on the backs of billions of enslaved mortals.
And securing those 400 worlds, it wasn't done through diplomacy.
Definitely not.
It was achieved through a battlefield technology that outright breaks the conventional laws of physics and warfare.
It really does.
The sources specifically highlight 3 pillars of the Sautekh military terror. We've got their advanced Gauss weaponry, the monolith war machines, and their resurrection protocols.
The big 3.
Yeah, and we need to explain exactly how these function because they don't just defeat opposing armies, they mentally break them.
Let's examine the Gauss weaponry first because it fundamentally alters the physics of an infantry engagement.
Okay, break it down.
Well, traditional ballistic or energy weapons rely on kinetic impact or thermal transfer to cause structural damage.
Like a bullet hitting you or a laser burning you.
Exactly. Gauss flares operate on a completely different paradigm. They project a localized, biphasic magnetic field that actively destabilizes molecular bonds.
So they don't just punch a hole in you.
No, they unbind the atoms of the target. They literally strip the armor, the flesh, and the bone away layer by microscopic layer.
Oh my God.
And then they pull that deatomized matter back toward the weapon.
It's literally the weaponization of unmaking.
Unmaking is the perfect word.
You are just dying on the battlefield. You are being physically deleted from reality in a microsecond of localized flaying.
Yes.
And if you somehow survive the infantry advancing with those weapons, you have to deal with the monoliths.
Which are a nightmare in their own right. The monolith serves as both a primary battle tank and a mobile fortress. But even those terms are woefully inadequate.
Yeah, tank doesn't really cover it.
Not at all. They're constructed mechadermis, which is living metal that actively repairs its own structural damage in real time.
Just heals itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But their true terror lies in their propulsion and deployment mechanics. They don't use treads. They don't use conventional thrusters.
So no noisy engines.
Right. They utilize anti-gravitic displacement to simply skim over the battlefield.
That is so creepy.
Imagine a multi-story, heavily armed fortress gliding silently over the terrain, completely impervious to conventional anti-tank weaponry, because the metal simply flows back together to seal any breach.
So, fighting a vehicle that heals its own wounds is terrifying enough. But it's the infantry's resurrection protocols that truly shatter the opposing military's mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in standard warfare, every strategy is ultimately based on attrition. You dig in, you trade fire, you deplete the enemy's numbers.
Right. You wear them down.
Exactly. You wear down their ammunition, their morale, until the line finally breaks. But attrition is a mathematical impossibility against an enemy that just reassembles itself.
It is. The mechanics of the resurrection protocols are a masterpiece of temporal and microscopic engineering.
How does it actually work?
Well, when a Necron warrior sustains catastrophic damage, two things happen almost simultaneously.
Okay.
First, phase-shifting technology immediately attempts to shunt the most critical cognitive and structural components into a localized pocket dimension.
Wait, what? A pocket dimension?
Yeah, it temporarily removes them from the physical battlefield entirely to avoid total destruction.
That is basically cheating.
It is. And second, millions of microscopic nanoscarabs embedded within the necrodermis activate. They utilize an artificial biological drive to aggressively knit the living metal back together at the molecular level.
It's like trying to fight a liquid.
Yes, exactly like that.
You swing a sword through water, and the moment the blade passes, the water just flows right back into the gap. You can't actually wound it.
You can't.
Imagine the psychological toll that takes on an Imperial Guardsman.
It would be devastating.
You line up a perfect shot, you blast a Necron warrior into 3 separate pieces, and you feel that momentary rush of victory, right? You neutralize the threat.
You think you won.
Exactly. And then, 10 seconds later, the metal slithers across the burt, reattaches, and the warrior just stands back up, completely unfazed, and raises its weapon again.
You are fighting a war against entropy, and the enemy has absolute mastery over the equation.
It's hopeless.
Every casualty you inflict is a momentary delay. It is not a permanent reduction in their force. This biological impossibility of meaningful victory, it strips away the morale of the opposing army long before they even run out of ammunition.
Right.
And the Sautekh nobility, whom the sources explicitly describe as the most aggressive of all the dynasties, they are actively, eagerly looking for excuses to deploy this unyielding force.
We want to use it.
They aren't holding this military in reserve. They are thrusting it outward in a relentless wave of expansion.
And when you possess a military that literally cannot be destroyed through attrition, your primary weapon is no longer just firepower. It becomes psychological terror.
Absolutely.
Imotekh understands this perfectly, which is why the Sautekh Dynasty has completely overhauled its physical presentation to weaponize dread.
Yes, their entire aesthetic.
The sources detail a very specific look. It's a stark, metallic, gray color scheme, angular symbols of expansionist ambition, and this is the most unsettling part-war engines that operate in complete and total silence.
The weaponization of silence is perhaps their most potent psychological tool.
It's so unnatural.
Throughout the entire history of biological warfare, noise has always been utilized to intimidate the enemy and bolster the courage of Allied troops, right?
Yeah, war drums, roaring engines.
The deafening shriek of artillery, the collective battle cries of thousands of soldiers, chaotic noise triggers the fight-or-flight response that pumps adrenaline into the system.
It gets you ready to fight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the Sautekh Dynasty engineers the exact opposite physical response.
It's like the uncanny valley of warfare.
Precisely that. When a massive armored line of monoliths and immortal infantry advances across a battlefield without producing a single decibel of sound, it feels fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, it strips the battlefield of passion, of anger.
Of humanity.
Right. There is no roar of a charging engine to focus your adrenaline against. There is only an imposing, approaching vacuum of sound that triggers a deeply primal dread.
It visually and audibly reflects what the sources term their, quote, cold, unwavering purpose.
Unwavering purpose.
It replaces the chaotic art of war with cold, inevitable mathematics.
It is so incredibly grim, and that stark, metallic, gray color scheme, it just reinforces the entire psychological profile.
It really does.
If you look at ancient imperialist human cultures, the Romans, the Egyptians, even the current Imperium in the lore, they use gold, vibrant purple, bright crimson.
Colors that pop.
Colors that shout about wealth, divine right, individual heroism. The Sautekh just discard all of that for a strictly utilitarian gray.
Completely devoid of flair.
It implies they have completely abandoned whatever soul or vibrant culture they might have possessed before the Great Sleep. Like they traded art and individuality for pure mechanized efficiency.
The absence of vibrant color is the deliberate absence of individuality.
Wow.
To the Sautekh, under Imotekh's rule, glory is no longer defined by cultural richness or individual heroics. Glory is defined entirely by order, by uniformity.
It's chilling.
The metallic gray is the color of a machine working perfectly, without any unnecessary friction or vanity. And this relentless, unified, terrifyingly silent front has created one of the most effective examples of psychological branding in galactic history.
Psychological branding, I like that term.
Yeah, the sources note that because of their overwhelming presence and aggression, the Sautekh have become entirely synonymous with the Necron race in the minds of the Imperium.
So they have completely monopolized the terror of the apocalypse.
Exactly.
When the average Imperial citizen or commander thinks of the ancient past rising up to slaughter them, they don't picture a complex, diverse array of competing dynasties with nuanced political goals.
Oh, they don't have time for nuance.
They just picture the silent, gray, unstoppable tide of the Sautekh.
And Imotekh has aggressively curated that exact perception. He has made his dynasty the undisputed face of the species to the outside galaxy.
And he achieved this not through propaganda, but through a series of highly calculated, devastating military campaigns, right?
Yes. The sources highlight two distinct arenas of conflict that perfectly illustrate his grand strategy.
Okay, let's get into those.
We have the Sanctaro campaign alongside the Siege of Hypnoth, and then we have the incredibly brutal Absorption Wars.
So the Sanctaro campaign and the Siege of Hypnoth, they're somewhat straightforward, right? Like, it's territorial expansion against Imperial forces.
Right. Classic conquest.
Testing the walls of humanity and pushing the boundaries of his empire outward. But the Absorption Wars are what really expose the depths of his ambition.
They reveal so much about him.
We know he launched these wars right on the heels of the Great Rift, taking advantage of the absolute galactic chaos that event caused.
Perfect timing.
But his targets weren't the Imperials or the chaotic forces pouring out of the rift. He targeted newly awakened Necron tomb worlds.
He weaponized the disorientation of his own species.
That is so cold.
It is.
Yeah.
While other dynasties were just beginning to stir from their 60 million year sleep, struggling with failing infrastructure and fragmented command chains.
Like the groggy bears we talked about.
Exactly. While they were stumbling around, Imotekh was kicking down their doors.
But strategically, is that not a massive waste of his logistical capacity?
How so?
I mean, if the galaxy is tearing itself apart, if there are massive Imperial armies and hostile Xenos threats everywhere, why spend immense resources brutally assimilating your own kind?
It seems counterintuitive.
It does. It just proves the point we discussed earlier. His true enemy isn't the alien. His true enemy is literally anyone who won't bow to him.
Well, I would say it is the ultimate exercise in ruthless risk mitigation.
Mitigation? Really?
Think about it. To the cold calculus of Imotekh's mind, a rival Necron dynasty, even a weak one, is not a potential ally against the Imperium. It is an uncontrolled variable.
Ah, and he hates variables.
A master strategist cannot tolerate variables he does not directly control. From a historical perspective, you never commit the bulk of your forces to a foreign conquest if your home front is fractured and volatile.
Right, you have to secure your base.
Exactly.
Right.
By launching the Absorption Wars, he's ensuring that no rival Necron power can ever consolidate enough strength to challenge him in the future.
Okay, that makes horrifying sense.
He is subjugating the family before he even begins to clear out the neighborhood.
Intraspecies colonization. He forces them to integrate their surviving technology and forces into his war machine, further expanding those 80 core worlds.
Consuming them, basically.
It proves his ambition is absolute. He doesn't just want to be the strongest faction, he wants to be the only faction.
Yes.
Which leads us to the absolute climax of his audacity. Because this refusal to tolerate any rival, even the most deeply ingrained authorities of his own kind, it culminates in the Pariah Crusade.
The Pariah Crusade represents a seismic shift in the galactic power dynamic.
It's huge.
In a massive display of ambition, Imotekh and his allied forces have risen up in open, active rebellion against the authority of the Silent King.
We really have to give that the weight it deserves.
Yes, we do.
Because you, listening to this, you have to understand, the Silent King isn't just a rival politician. He isn't just a neighboring warlord.
No, not at all.
Yeah. He is the supreme ruler of all Necrons. He is the entity responsible for their current mechanical state of being. He is basically the god king of their entire species.
The creator figure, in a way.
Right. And Imotekh looked at him and said, no, I run this now.
It essentially completes the evolutionary arc of Imotekh the Stormlord as detailed in the source texts.
Let's trace that real quick.
Yeah, trace the trajectory we've mapped out today. He began as an awakened general, summoned merely to win a localized dispute on a single planet.
Right.
He then became a usurper, seizing the throne of Mandragora.
Then a conqueror.
Expanded into a galactic conqueror, enslaving hundreds of Xenos worlds and crushing rival dynasties in the Absorption Wars. And now he has evolved into a revolutionary.
Aiming to forcibly overthrow the supreme creator monarch of his entire race.
Yes.
I mean, the Pretender woke him up to win a tiny little squabble over a crown, and Imotekh escalated it until he is fighting a cosmic civil war for control of the entire galaxy.
Talk about overachieving.
Seriously.
But the implications for the rest of the galaxy are catastrophic.
Because they're caught in the middle.
Exactly. The Necrons were already a terrifying threat when they were viewed as a unified sleeping giant slowly waking up. But the Pariah Crusade means that this hyper-aggressive, incredibly advanced military machine is actively creating a volatile, unpredictable civil war on a cosmic scale.
Right.
The galaxy isn't just dealing with a conqueror anymore. It is caught in the crossfire of a warring, fractured powerhouse, where the most aggressive, mathematically ruthless faction is trying to forcibly consume the rest.
The collateral damage of two immortal, unyielding forces clashing across the stars is mathematically incalculable.
It is a nightmare scenario for every other species.
So how do we synthesize all of this? What is the core takeaway for you, the listener, trying to wrap your head around the reality of the Sautekh Dynasty?
There's a lot to process.
Let's trace the journey we've mapped from the sources today. We started with a sleeping third-tier power that managed to survive the eons intact, only to wake up to a fractured warring capital. Mandragora. And that initial chaos provided the perfect opening for a ruthlessly efficient strategist, Imotekh the Stormlord, to seize absolute power.
A power he immediately centralized.
Right. He took command of a pristine infrastructure, 80 core worlds, advanced deatomizing Gauss weaponry, silent anti-gravitic monoliths, and infantry that simply refused to stay dead.
The unyielding legion.
He then leveraged that unyielding technology to not only brutally assimilate his own kind in the Absorption Wars, but to enslave 400 biological Xenos planets to fuel his industrial machine.
400 worlds.
And he is driven by an ambition so mathematically absolute that he has launched a crusade to overthrow the supreme god king of his own race.
It serves as a profound historical and strategic study in the danger of awakening forces, or, adopting systemic efficiencies that you mistakenly believe you can control.
That's a really good point.
The Pretender on Mandragora thought he was acquiring a highly effective tool to solve a local problem. He actually acquired a tyrant who reshaped the galaxy.
Right.
And whether we are analyzing ancient galactic empires or examining the adoption of deeply disruptive, hyper-efficient technologies in modern logistics, the underlying lesson is the same. True efficiency, when completely untethered from empathy, loyalty, or tradition, possesses an ambition all its own.
Wow.
Once you unleash a system designed purely to optimize and conquer, it will relentlessly optimize everything in its path, including the architect who unleashed it.
You think you are holding the leash, but the leash is actually holding you.
Exactly.
And before we conclude today's deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, deeply unsettling thought built on the foundation of what we've discussed today.
Let's hear it.
We spent a significant amount of time detailing the terrifying mechanical reality of the Sautekh military, specifically those resurrection protocols, and the logistical nightmare of the 400 worlds populated by enslaved biological xenos races.
Yeah, the industrial slavery.
I want you to really project yourself into that reality and ponder this. What does the concept of rebellion, or even the fundamental concept of hope, look like to those enslaved biological races?
It's hard to even imagine.
Imagine being a mortal, flesh and blood creature born into the grinding industrial machine of a Sautekh slave world. You live your entire life under the silent, hovering shadow of metallic overlords who do not sleep, do not eat, and do not show mercy.
Just cold mathematics.
Imagine that against all mathematical odds, you mount a desperate, bloody rebellion. You sacrifice thousands of your own people, you breach their silent fortresses, and you miraculously manage to strike down your metallic oppressor.
You actually win.
You physically destroy the local overlords. For one brief, shining second, you experience the absolute pinnacle of victory.
To triumph.
And then the phase shifters activate.
Oh no.
The microscopic nanoscarabs swarm over the wreckage, the living metal slithers across the floor, knits back together at the molecular level, and the overlord stands back up, completely undamaged, and looks down at you in total silence.
That is just soul-crushing.
Does the sheer, grinding, inescapable reality of an enemy that literally cannot stay dead eventually rewrite the foundational psychology of an enslaved species?
Would have to.
Over generations, does the biological impossibility of a permanent victory eventually erase the very concept of hope from their culture entirely?
I mean, how could it not?
When the universe mathematically proves to you that your oppressor is eternal, what happens to the mortal mind?
It's a terrifying question.
It's a chilling realization about the true cost of the Sautekh's efficiency. And it is something for you to think about long after this deep dive ends.